to the fundamentals of topicality. Now, in this file, turn to page 2. Why would I have the resolution in the file?
That way, if someone is not in the resolution, you can read it.
So you can give it to the judge if there's a
Okay.
question. And it looks really official, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not just you typing it out. Do I have like high school federation, press release saying this is the topic and the voting and the date and all that? Why is that important? Okay, let's talk about, number one, we only run topicality when it is
True.
true. Now, we're gonna talk about what that really, really means, because this weekend, I saw a lot of instances when we could have run topicality, but we didn't, because we don't have a clue as to what. Or we're running weird T and dissipating how we're running it. So it's like, we will be very clear on what topicality is. So number one, we only run it when it's true. Why? Because you do not have college debaters judging you every weekend who just want to play this verbal sparring game of who can out-debate the other on topicality. And there is a level of high school debate and college debate where running T is just a strategy. And you run it, and maybe somebody makes a mistake, and you go for it, or you drop it, and it's like anything else, it's just an argument. However, in high school, you do not have those judges. And regular judges do not want to hear these arguments, because it's boring, it doesn't make any sense, it's highly technical. So, we only run it when it's true, but when it's true, we should run it, okay? But, the thing about topicality is that you are asking the judge to ignore everything else in the round and essentially call someone out of bounds, right? They're like, I don't care what their arguments were, what their case is, they're not following the rules, they're not topical, I vote. That's a very hard hurdle for moms, teachers, a lot of the people who are judging it, is to say, I'm going to make this first decision to vote against someone. So it is really important when we run T that we run it correctly so that we help people be able to make that decision, okay? And so this file is designed to teach you how to do that. We're going to go through it tonight. Now, of course, I have to draw what when I talk
The
about
circle.
topicality? I have to draw a circle.
The resolution.
Okay, the circle, because I don't think we really have this concept well. The fence of this circle is really the words of the resolution, okay? These are the words. So it is that the USFG should substantially increase economic engagement toward Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela, right? Those are our words? Okay. Now, those words create the fence. The affirmative must be within the fence.
Yeah.
Now, what that really means is the affirmative must use every word. They can't just run a case about Venezuela. It's kind of in the ballpark, but it's not enough. They can run a case about Venezuela, but it has to do these things. If it's about Venezuela, but it has to do with providing sex education to sex workers in Venezuela. Does that sound like it's USFG increase economic engagement with Venezuela? What does it sound like?
Foreign aid.
Foreign aid, humanitarian aid, I don't know, training, something weird. So, because with these words, so this is Afland, right? What's out here, outside the circle?
T. Or
No, whose
Neg.
ground is this?
oh, negs.
This is neg ground. And this neg ground is everything, right? Everything in the world. Now, because we have these countries, is there a lot of neg ground that deals with Cuba?
Yeah.
Because what's neg ground that's not F ground that would deal with Cuba? Any idea?
Like
What about after a hurricane, we send humanitarian aid? Do we think humanitarian aid is economic engagement?
no.
No.
Okay, how do we know that? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Evidence.
Because the words aren't even the same.
What?
The words aren't even the same.
Okay, what you have to remember when we're talking about topicality is that there is a reason these words are the words. If the framers, if the debate community, and I like to use the term debate community rather than framers, because there isn't really like a framer. But there really is a debate community that talks about and fine tunes the resolution and then puts it out and everybody votes on it and narrows it down. If they just wanted you to debate Cuba, how would they have worded the topic?
Substantially increase economic engagement to Cuba.
That the United States should change its foreign policy towards Cuba. Would foreign policy be a broader term? Would it encompass more?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, there are broader terms that could have been used. Did they use them? Why did they use economic engagement?
Because it's more specific.
To make it smaller, okay? They didn't want it to be everything that it could be, because why? It's too broad. There's too much out there that it could be. So they didn't want you to debate everything to do with Mexico, everything to do with Venezuela, everything to do with Cuba. They wanted to narrow the scope so that the negative knows the affirmative is going to advocate some kind of increased, so there's a direction, economic engagement. So humanitarian aid, we would kind of presume is more touchy-feely stuff. And when we use the word economics, what do we kind of envision is happening?
Like policies.
Capitalism, commerce, stuff, right? So, would we need definitions to explain that to a judge?
No. It's okay.
Yeah, you could use a definition, but would you need a definition? Did I use a definition to explain to you how humanitarian aid is different from economic?
Mm-hmm.
And that the topic could be bigger, but the community chose it to be smaller. And they did it with good reason. So, all right, out here it's everything in Negland. So anything to do with Cuba that is not economic engagement is out here that's Negland. And everything to do with Mexico that is not economic engagement is what?
Negland.
Negland and Venezuela. So, if the U.S. changed its immigration policy, okay? Let's say right now, if you live in Mexico and you want to move to the United States, what do you have to do?
You have to deal with a lot of stuff.
You have to do a
It's really
lot
hard.
of stuff.
You have to apply for citizenship and
But you can't even apply for citizenship. You have to apply for a visa, a work visa, you have to get a job, you have to get in line, put your name on the list, wait years maybe.
Yeah. It's so hard.
It's hard. Now, if the U.S. changed its domestic policy and said, we're gonna start taking in more immigrants, and some of those more immigrants would be from Mexico, would that be an increase in economic engagement
No.
toward Mexico?
no.
Now, it starts getting a little bit iffy because when we talk about people and workers, that might be, but is that economic engagement toward Mexico?
Mm-mm.
No, what would immigration be? Would that be a domestic US policy
Yeah.
on who we were gonna bring in, and that those people might come from Mexico,
Yeah. Well, we're not engaging the Mexican government.
but it's toward, it really wouldn't be, right, they wouldn't be involved in it. It would be a domestic issue, we would deal with it. Okay, so I want you to start thinking, because right now, what I was seeing this weekend is as long as an app said Cuba, Mexico, or Venezuela, is like, okay, we think that's topical, but maybe it's only effectually topical. We're not even gonna talk about what affects T is. We're gonna talk about topicality. Topicality is you either are or you aren't. It's kind of like you're alive or you're dead. There is no in-between ground. Okay? You're topical or you are non-topical, or you are untopical. And it is not wishy-washy because this is a fence. The app is either in here or they're not. And if they're not, then they're not upholding their obligation on the ground. They're not following the rules and they're gonna lose. So, I have nothing on my lovely glossary page. I probably will on the next version, but I didn't get it done. All right, would someone stand up and read page 1, the one on page 4, of our economic engagement violation? Now, let's envision, because I watched this lovely round, a plan that the US and Mexico will now trade drugs.
What?
Meaning illegal drugs.
Oh my god.
Oh, this is pictures and board as well.
Okay. What do you think? No, I'll tell you what, let's not do that one yet. Let's do sex education for Venezuela sex workers. Okay? So, now, what kind of judges did we have at Kelly Walsh?
Well,
I'd
we
say
did
more
have a lot
parents.
of. Well, no, we had a lot of college debaters.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, they were friends with us
Okay,
here.
now,
Oh.
no, what we had were a lot of college parley debaters.
Yeah.
Parley,
Don't
although
really
it starts with a P,
Page.
is not policy and does not have the same constructs, but there should be some carryover. Okay, but they would not be like having a UW policy debater judge. It would be night and day. So we had some what I would call policymaker type judges. And we had some communication
Yeah.
type judges. Does that seem like a reasonable? Okay.
Yeah.
This file on page 4 says what at the top?
Stocks paradigm.
No, 2 paradigms,
Well, communication and stocks.
communication and stocks. Now, when I say stocks, what I mean is kind of old, somebody's old, but they used to debate in high school, maybe an old coach who says I'm a stock issue, someone who's maybe doing some flowing, but it's not quite what you would expect, but they kind of understand some of the terminology. So it could be everything from someone who's never seen a round to someone who's maybe flowing in a mode, but you're slow around, we're gonna make sense. Someone stand up and read page 1.
You can do it.
Alright.
I volunteer you.
And let's time it, because when we have these kind of blocks, one of the things that we need to be doing is, like something like this, you need to know and have written on it what the reading time is. Why?
No way you can structure your speech.
Exactly. Does it make sense that we would have practiced ahead of time? We'd know how long it takes you to read it. So then when you're putting your speech together, you've got an idea, oh, okay, this is gonna take this much time, and I've got this much time for other arguments. So things, that even on half answers to things, does that make sense to start jotting down somewhere on it so you kind of know, oh, if I read all of this, it's gonna take this much time. So maybe I'm not gonna read all these answers on this. Now, on T, you gotta read the whole thing. Let's see how it goes. I want the others to flow it.
Okay.
You can just time it up because you're not timing, right? I want you to flow it because we're gonna talk about what the arguments are and why we're laying it out this way.
How do I time it up?
Oh, you just hit start.
Oh. Okay. Pretty self-explanatory now. Alright. Economic engagement violation. Imagine the United States Supreme Court
No,
declaring...
stop.
Nope.
Where'd that come from? You're gonna say this is the topicality argument,
Okay.
and then you're gonna start reading the paragraph. So you're not gonna read that violation is there for you for the table of contents,
Okay.
so you know what it is, but don't read it.
Okay. This is a topicality argument. Imagine the United States Supreme Court declaring it will decide any case it wants. Federal questions or constitutionality are no longer voting issues to them. Or the calculus professor informing his class that education will be better served if he teaches them Russian. Or the football team that runs the ball up into the stands, arguing as long as they are playing football, the boundary of the field is irrelevant and both teams have the ability to run around the stadium. This is basically what the affirmative presented. The topic we agreed to debate is resolved. The United States federal government should substantially increase its economic engagement towards Cuba, Mexico, and Venezuela. First, the plan proposes the United States increase sexual education towards Venezuela. Second, taking this action is not economic engagement. Economic engagement consists of economic incentives, according to Richard Haas, Director of Foreign Policy Studies at the Brookings Institution in 2000. Architects of engagement strategies can choose from a wide variety of incentives. Economic engagement might offer tangible incentives such as export credits, investment insurance, or promotion, access to technology, loans, or economic aid. Other equally useful economic incentives involve the removal of penalties such as trade embargoes, investment bans, or high tariffs, which have impeded economic relations between the United States and the target country. The affirmative is non-topical and therefore cannot win today's debate. One, they are extra topical. The affirmative plan mandates actions not authorized under the resolution. They mandate the U.S. sign an international
Yeah,
agreement.
and that's not correct. I didn't take some stuff out. So you just have to, and I need to get fix that.
Okay.
You have to say what they mandate.
Oh, okay. Alright, do you want me to go back over that?
Just pick up and explain what the plan does that would be extra topical.
Okay. The affirmative plan sends educational aid towards sexual education to Venezuela, and they're not authorized under the resolution. They mandate the U.S. sign an international agreement towards sexual education, agreeing to that. Nothing in the resolution allows them to make either of those actions. This is beyond the scope of the resolution. Two, they are non-topical. The affirmative plan does not increase any type of economic incentive as the resolution demands. This isn't to say that many of the issues the affirmative brings up are areas worthy of discussion. They are, but not today. Economic engagement is not a synonym for anything to do with the U.S. and Venezuela. If the debate community wanted us to debate U.S. foreign policy or U.S. foreign aid policy, the topic would be worded quite differently. The educational value of debate comes from the use of evidence and personal knowledge in the discussion of an issue. Both teams must be prepared to debate the same issue. The resolution guarantees this common ground.
Okay, because if they aren't topical, then do you think the plan's doing something extra topical? Meaning outside, right? Right. So that's why it's in here. There's a little bit of jargon, but is there much jargon here?
No.
Mm-mm.
Is it explaining the situation
Yeah.
really clearly to someone who might not know debate? Okay, why don't you keep reading to the second page?
Alright. Topicality is the foundation of policy debate. They must affirm the resolution. This is the first and most important stock issue, as explained by Herbeck and Koslas, professors of speech communication, Boston College Journal of the American Forensic Association. Similar to the rules which govern the time limits and the number of speeches for debate, the rule that topicality is a voting issue remains non-debatable. The participants of all competitive games arrive at some consensual agreement on the rules prior to the start of the contest. The affirmative fails to meet this key prima facie issue. They are trying to run the football up into the bleachers, and the unfortunate outcome is no one advocating the resolution in this debate round. The charge of the affirmative is to affirm the resolution, and when you vote, you choose either to affirm or negate the resolution, based upon the rules of debate and our debate skills. You are the referee in this round and must enforce this most fundamental tenet of debate. It is not unfortunate that the affirmative has chosen to put you in this position, but you are not in a position to affirm the resolution in this debate.
Now, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could your mother understand this? Now, what are we doing to communicate really difficult debate issues?
We're using football analogy.
We're using football or other analogies
Sports.
that lay it out. Are we explaining that the judge is going to have to enforce this rule because it's a precept?
Right.
Do we read authorities, and is it very important that you read the qualifications of the people that you're quoting saying why this is so important? Now, we wouldn't do that if we had a college debater in the round, because they'd be like, well, just explain to me why this is important. Why would your mom need to know?
Because she knows nothing about topicality.
Right. And so is she gonna take a high school student's word that she should drop this team, who seems to have all this knowledge and information about this country, just because some high school student says they're not topical?
Mm-hmm.
Have to lay it out very logically and straightforward. The reason it's important that you understand how to communicate it is because you're gonna have to be able to explain that in rebuttals as you keep going, right?
Right.
So, it's for this kind of judge, then we're gonna have it very clear. Now, this goes on,
2NC.
there's a 2NC extension, which, because they're gonna have answers. What are they gonna answer?
The
They are topical, blah, 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 counter definition.
Right, they're gonna say, oh, we're topical, right? Here's our counter definition. And most of it they're gonna zip through really fast, right?
Right.
You're gonna have to spend all this time, and they're gonna, economic engagement, and they didn't run, there was voters, and da-da-da-da. Wait, did you run voters?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you call it voters?
No.
No.
What do you think those last paragraphs were telling the judge to do?
Not vote for the
Why
affirmative.
they can't win.
Right. You're
Why
gonna
they
vote
must
on
not
this,
win.
because it's a rule of the game, right? Does that sound like a voter?
Yeah, but in a way that your mom would understand.
Right. So remember, communication and persuasion is always about putting things into a context that the person adjudicating can understand and feels competent and confident that this is what they're supposed to do. So, we've got a 2NC extension. Okay, that would be the regular stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna go on for quite a while. Then they might say, well, fiat makes this topic. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, wait, real fast. What do you, fiat?
Fiat. Okay, let's talk about what fiat lets, actually, that's a good thing. Look, stand up and read page 8.
Okay.
Because this explains what fiat is, because this is for the communication and stocks judge.
This is how much it took you?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can write it.
Do you wanna write that down?
Write it down.
Okay.
Christian, before you get going, we have me expand.
Cutting off the top of his head.
Yep.
Tall and
Close enough.
Go.
Fiat doesn't create topicality. 1. Fiat allows the affirmative to assume a resolution plan will be adopted. David Snowball, Professor of Debate, Augustana College. Fiat from the Latin for let it be done, is a debate convention designed to focus attention on the substance of our resolutions rather than on questions of political feasibility. Operating through the world should, in the resolution, fiat represents a willing suspension of disbelief which allows us to pretend that the plan advocated by the affirmative team is already in operation. 2. Fiat cannot extend beyond the action allowed by the resolution. Robert Trapp, Professor Debate, William Ed University. One common but improper use of fiat is when debaters attempt to make fiat extend beyond the action envisioned by the proposition. Fiat is related to the term should in the debate proposition. The only actions subjected to fiat are those actions named in proposition. Fiat does not apply to actions the affirmative team may support which go beyond the proposition. Increasing sexual education to Venezuela is not topical. It is beyond the resolution. They cannot utilize fiat in the manner they assert. When you analyze their argument, if fiat can be applied in the way they argue, there's no reason to have a debate. The act can fiat away any negative argument, in this case, topicality, but the same can apply to a solvency or disadvantage. Thus, we know their argument is flawed. It provides so much power to the affirmative, no negative would ever win. There would be no reason to have a debate.
Okay, so fiat is the magic wand that, as long as the affirmative is in land, within the fence, the affirmative gets to say, we're not going to debate, would this policy be implemented? It just will. If the judge votes aft, then we pretend that fairy dust and the magic fiat wand, that the plan happens. So we don't have to debate politics. Would Congress vote to do this? Because if every debate mucked into that, we wouldn't have much to debate about on Cuba, would we?
Right.
Because it'd be like, no, Congress won't do it. So the act can't win. So they have fiat, but what can they fiat? What can they fiat?
The resolution?
The United States federal government should substantially increase its economic engagement toward Cuba, Mexico, or Venezuela. Can they fiat solvency?
Yeah.
Can they say, oh, we have fiat,
Yeah.
so our
We can
plan
solve.
will work? Can you say that on your case? Oh, we have fiat, so
No.
Cuba's gonna buy all the food they need, give it to their people, and there will be no starvation.
No.
No. You can say, when the judge votes for us, then the agricultural provisions regarding the embargo, poof, disappear. Plan just happens. That's all AFT can do, is fiat. So fiat is Latin for let it be done, and it's just, it lets the affirmative jump over and say, we're gonna pretend we can do this. And a great example of that, if you get mired in a debate, trying to explain to someone about fiat, is pretend that we were debating before the Civil War that slavery should be abolished. We would debate the pros and cons of whether it should, not the logistics of, oh, there's gonna be this horrifically bloody war that's gonna come close to ripping the nation apart. It's not gonna, you don't have to debate that. You debate the merits of the issue, not the implementation. Does that make sense what fiat is?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where I thought the evidence and the explanation might help. But this is really designed to explain to someone who doesn't know what fiat is, what it is. But I always think of it as a magic wand, poof. So if I have the ballot, if I vote aye, nothing happens. If I vote nay, nothing happens. So does that make sense on what fiat is?
Yeah.
Okay, now, let's talk for a minute about, because there's another term when we're running topicality, a priori.
Priority issue.
Yeah, it means top priority, right?
Yes, means top of the list. Why is topicality an a priori issue?
Because if they're not even within the bounds of the resolution.
Fairness.
Right.
Right, that's what the analogies and all those things said. If they aren't playing by the rules, the judge has to say they're out of bounds.
Right.
And if they're out of bounds, then you shouldn't have to go chase them around.
Yeah, we can't debate if they're not debating the same thing as us.
Exactly. Why do we have topicality?
Fairness.
What?
Fairness. Like why?
Everything always comes to fairness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because if the affirmative can advocate anything,
Yeah.
like, let's say the affirmative says, we are going to send U.S. healthcare workers to Cuba, Mexico, and Venezuela. And we will administer vaccinations for all preventative childhood diseases to all children under the age of 5 in all of those countries.
Isn't that UNICEF? Just without the federal government?
Well, no, because it would be us saying it would happen. UNICEF has limited resources. UNICEF can't do things that countries don't let them go in and do, right? But I can use the magic wand of fiat and say, I think the United States federal government should just go be the childhood vaccination king of those 3 countries. Be a pretty swell case, huh?
I guess, that's not economic engagement.
What do you mean you guess? You don't think it'd be a great idea to
Yeah.
vaccinate children against preventable
Yes.
diseases?
Yes, it'd be lovely, but it's
Yes,
not the
it would-
resolution.
It would be lovely, be a great idea. Did I do all 3 countries? 3 times the fun. Why is that not fair?
This is not economic engagement.
Are you on the negative prepared to debate that?
No,
No.
because we've researched policies for those companies, not aid.
Right. That's a different animal, right? It's not economic
It's a
engagement,
horseman
it's
at a
something
collar.
else.
Huh?
Now, do you think maybe in our tubs, we should maybe have a definition of foreign policy, foreign aid, humanitarian aid, that you could use as a contrast to economic engagement? Probably. Now, let's go back and talk about the definition that I chose to use. What is the definition that we're going to run on the negative for what is economic engagement?
It's from Haas in 2000.
What does it say economic engagement is?
Tangible incentives.
Yeah,
Go
economic
further.
incentives.
Export credits, investment insurance, promotion, technology, loans, economic aid.
Keep going.
Removal penalties such as trade embargoes, investment bans,
You
or
skipped
high
over a
tariffs.
term though that I really like. It says other
Equally
equally
useful.
economic incentives.
Okay.
Okay. Is this a really nice laundry list?
Yeah.
Does that make it very clear? Does it look like humanitarian aid would be in this list? I think I want us, when we're running Topicality on the negative, to think economic incentives and engagement, meaning that we have something ongoing.
Right, like it's mutually
Right,
beneficial.
and I like that this is a laundry list that we can refer, because you can go, okay, here, this guy who is Director of Foreign Policy Studies at Brookings, which is major think tank.
Yeah.
Good guy, says, and he uses the term here, it is a term of art, and it's very specifically this, or removing embargoes or tariffs, right?
Mhm.
Then can we look at an app and go, they either are or aren't? Whereas a lot of the other definitions aren't quite so laundry listy and are a little bit more
Broad.
or unclear. I wanted something on the negative, so I want economic incentives is a good term to use. The other thing that you want to use is it's a term of art. In other words, it is a specific term. It's not economic and engagement, it's not foreign policy, it's not other things. The framers chose this for a reason, and that there are real definitions of it. And you need to have that kind of passion about topicality when you're gonna run it. Does that make sense, how we're laying this out? Okay. Now, beyond fiat makes them topical. What else might be answered? What's on page 9?
Outcome of plan makes AF topical to the
Right. But we deal with economics.
yeah.
Now, are we gonna run effects T?
No.
What are
Probably
we running?
economic engagement.
They're not topical. The reason I don't want you to run and effects and extra follow into this, I want the core of our argumentation to be they are not topical.
Okay.
They're not topical, going to vote against them. Now, as we go into extensions, we may explain, well, that's beyond what the resolution lets you do. Because if they're not topical, then chances are they're bumping out and doing things that you all could actually do. And we may use some of those terms. So we have this lovely file that goes how far, that's just for communication and stock studies.
21.
No. Look at the top, because I need to make sure you understand
All
how to use
11
this file.
pages. It goes until
Yeah.
page 11.
Right. So those are answers and things, all this, so at the top, you have to know your judges and what you're gonna use that for. Now, on page 12, what does it say this file is for?
Split panel or policy maker.
Okay, let's talk about what do I mean by a split panel?
Like you have one policymaker and then you have a.
Yeah, like
oh.
in the SEMS round where they had like a college coach and then a college debater and then a community judge.
Who'd never seen debate at all. Right. That would be a split panel. Now, why wouldn't I just go for the college people?
Because you.
Why wouldn't I just blow off the community person and go for the two
Because the
college
other
people?
two judges could split.
Yes.
That's
And
what happened.
given that one of them is a college parley debater, who may not understand a lot of jargon and what topicality and some of those issues are, quite in the context that we want, it would make me nervous. So, Mark, why don't you get up and read this file, and let's time it.
Is it?
Now, this is split panel or policymaker paradigm. In this is where coaches might be, unless they say they're a stock issue. An older judge who's debated, kind of a traditional debate person. Okay?
Affirmative plan is non-topical. Imagine the football team running the ball into the stands, arguing as long as they are actually playing football. The boundary of the field is irrelevant. Both teams have the ability to run around the stadium, and their teams already knew they used to play. A. Violation. U.S. federal government should increase its economic engagement towards Cuba, Mexico, and Venezuela. The resolution is very specific about the action that the affirmative plan is to take. It must, on faith, increase United States economic engagement towards one of the three countries. The affirmative plan proposes sex education to Venezuela. 2. The affirmative section is not economic engagement. Economic engagement consists of economic incentives. Richard Haas, Director of Foreign Policy Studies, the Brookings Institution in 2000. Architects of engagement strategies can choose from a wide variety of incentives. Economic engagement might offer tangible incentives such as export credits, investment, insurance, or promotion. Access to technology, loans, or economic aid. Other equally useful economic incentives involve the removal of penalties such as trade embargoes, investment bans, or high tariffs, which have impeded economic relations between the U.S. and the target country. B. Negative interpretation. The affirmative plan doesn't deal with economic incentives. Our evidence is pretty clear. That would be export credits, investment promotion, loans, or removing tariffs, or the trade embargo. They give sex education to Venezuela. 1. Standard common usage. If your aunt was asked, does sex ed
To
to Venezuela increase economic engagement? She answers no. They are non-topical. 2. Standard field context. Although they deal with Venezuela, that isn't enough to be topical. The resolution requires the United States to be engaged economically with them. Economic engagement is not a synonym for anything regarding the U.S. and Venezuela. This is a very specific term relating to foreign and economic policy that have had all year to write an affirmative that falls within the resolution. C. Topicality is a voting issue for reasons of 1. Jurisdiction, 2. Fairness, and 3. Education. Topicality is the foundation of policy debate. They must affirm the resolution. This is an a priori issue, meaning if the affirmative does not meet the obligation of presenting a topical plan, none of their other arguments may be listened or voted upon. Just because we know they are going to run the ball up into the stands when we prepared, that doesn't mean the referees shouldn't enforce the rules and penalize them.
Okay, so, is this a little bit more what a standard T show would look like?
Yeah.
A little bit more violations, some standards, voters, why are we doing that? Because we have a judge who, at least most of them or the majority are gonna be in that context. Now, actually, this goes on and has a second page that deals with the extra T part, with additional standards.
I think so.
And the reason you're gonna do that is because
Uh-oh.
you wanna spend the time to lay out them as independent reasons to vote against them,
Okay.
okay? In other words, you don't want the T debate to be small, you want the T debate to be big.
Okay.
And one of the mistakes I'm seeing us make is we run arguments, and then as we get into variables, it's like, well, group all the T. No, if we're running separate T arguments, there's separate T arguments, and it's like, this one is a reason to vote against them. This one's a reason to vote against them, just like a dissent. That'd be like saying, group all our arguments. I'll have 3 responses. On our dissent, this. On solvency, this. We wouldn't do that, right?
No.
So, same thing on T. We run it because on this topic, most of the time, if they're not topical, they're doing a bunch of stuff that's beyond the resolution. And so we're gonna call that extra topicality, but call it as an independent reason with lots of standards so that we're spending time on topicality, okay? Now, Bailey, because we're running out of time, I want you to get up and read page 18.
Nope.
Who is page 18 for? What does that mean? Do I mean your opponent is speaking fast?
No, like your judges are.
That you have technical
Yeah.
judges like speaking fast?
So your judge is like a UW policy debater.
UW or some of the judges that we get down in Denver
Yeah.
who have a great deal of experience and knowledge and are like, I'm fine with speed, and da-da-da-da-da. That's who this would be for, okay?
Imagine a football team running the ball into the stands, arguing as long as they are actually playing football, the boundary of the field is irrelevant. Both teams have the ability to run around the stadium, and the other team already knew to use that play. A. Violation. USFG increase economic engagement. Resolution is clear. AF plan must on face increase U.S. economic engagement. AF plan does send sex ed to Venezuela. B. Negative interpretation. Plan doesn't increase U.S. economic engagement. Mandate is to Venezuela. Okay.
Oh.
1. Standard. Common usage. If your aunt is asked, does sex ed to Venezuela increase U.S. economic engagement, she'll answer no. 2. Standard. Field context. Just because they talk about Venezuela, that doesn't make them topical. Experts in the field say the term economic engagement is a very specific term. Economic engagement consists of economic incentives. Richard Haas, the Brookings Institute in 2000. Architects of economic strategies can choose from a wide variety of incentives. Economic engagement might offer tangible incentives such as export credits, investment insurance, or promotions, access to technology, loans, or economic aid. Other equally useful economic incentives involve the removal of penalties such as trade embargoes, investment bans, and high tariffs, which have impeded economic relations between the U.S. and the target country. Economic engagement is not a synonym for anything regarding the U.S. and Venezuela. This is a very specific term relating to foreign and economic policy, and they have had all year to write an affirmative that falls within the resolution. C. Topicality is a voter. 1 ground. Our interpretation provides a clear demarcation between AF and NEG ground. U.S. economic incentives are AF ground, and other types of incentives, such as military aid, humanitarian assistance, are negative ground. 2. Predictability. Absent the risk of losing debates on topicality, they have no incentive whatsoever to even pretend to consider the resolution. The chance of winning debates due to inadequate negative prep offers an incentive to avoid the resolution. If it weren't a voter, AFS could be expected to run cases such as building nuclear power plants for Cuba. 3. Education. Our interpretation provides the context of how the U.S. actually sees the purpose and execution of economic engagement. Hence, it is the core of the educational goals of the topic.
Okay, and then the second page goes into extra T as well, but it's structured shorter for fast. I still want the persuasion of running it. I don't want a really short T-shell. Why? Even for a fast round.
Because that'll make it seem like it's not an important thing.
I want that we're going for this. We're running it, it's true, we're gonna spend time on it. I wanna use language to say we're right, we're persuasive. I wanna lay out all the groundwork so that we're sending the message. This isn't a time suck. This is an argument that we're gonna talk about. Now, in my last few minutes, what I wanna talk about that's really important. So, does this kind of make sense where we are on topicality?
Yeah.
Okay, that sometimes just because they deal with the country doesn't make them topical, but very specifically, in the round that I watched of Borgard and Patriots, the ad plan was the United States will trade drugs with Mexico. That was the plan. And the whole case is about legalizing drugs, and that if we would do that, it would reduce crime, it would take away the power of the cartels, it would do all kinds of things. Yes.
But
It was
if,
pain.
well, it's kind of weird because if they already have drugs now, then
No,
how is it really doing
well,
it?
no, what's weird about it is that they want to change U.S. federal law.
Okay, now, can they topically,
They're not gonna
could
do
the US government, I guess, buy pot and cocaine and heroin from Mexico?
Yeah, they could.
So would that be topical if we're buying stuff from Mexico? Sort of, maybe? Would
But
that
then,
be trade?
no, because Mexico wouldn't buy drugs from us.
Well, but, like,
that. Except for Denver.
eliminating the embargo, we're not gonna buy a lot from Cuba, right?
Right,
That's not the big deal, right?
right.
It's that we won't sell them stuff when we're so close. So, trade doesn't always have to be reciprocal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, trade can just be, I'm gonna buy stuff from you. But it could be trade. Could the US, so let's talk about, is the plan text on face topical?
No,
No? Why not?
because they're wanting to change the federal law.
Well, I don't know, because the federal government,
They
you know,
don't
they
use those
drug bust all
words.
the time and they take on drugs. I would guess that we could fund buying stuff from Mexico and that wouldn't be illegal. It's illegal for me though.
Not much in Denver.
But I'm kind of guessing the government, I mean, because they take that stuff in, so it must be legal for them to have it,
Okay.
okay? So, I think this is a case where on face, the plan is topical.
Okay.
Okay.
Tangentially, the plan, in an obscure, weird way, could probably be justified as topical. That the US federal government would buy these things. However, what can they not do within the resolution?
Subs.
Can they legalize US law
No.
on possession of those drugs?
No.
Could they create legislation where the federal government would set up pharmacies or dispensaries to start selling those drugs to us? Because we don't have a system right now other than a little bit in Colorado and some medical marijuana places. We have no system or laws to regulate or do that, right?
Right.
Can they do any of those things?
No.
Because where would that be?
Way up there.
This would be way out in NIC ground. Could the NIC argue, let's counterplan legalized drugs?
Yeah.
Would that be within NIC
Yeah.
territory? Would that be in any way topical or
No. But
whatever?
cause it-
And in fact, in this case, it would be competitive because all of their advantages came from legalizing drugs.
Right, so it'd be mutually beneficial, and then we would have the net benefit of having it like be legal, right?
Right. And be able to have regulations, because their plan wouldn't solve for anything.
Right.
They presumed fiat allowed them to legalize drugs. Would it? What does fiat let them do?
Jump over the fence and pretend.
No, it does not let them jump over the fence.
Well, it's a
Fiat
fence.
only works within the fence.
Okay.
It's like going to Disneyland. All the stuff, all the magic only happens at Disneyland. You go outside the fence, there's no magic. Inside the fence, there's magic. Okay?
Okay.
Magic school bus. That's the first thing that popped in my head.
So, when we're hearing these wanky cases, we're just gonna, oh, Mexico, oh, it's Cuba, oh, it's Venezuela, it must be topical. No, most of these I'm hearing are not topical cases. There's a reason you don't have NAIC files on them. And so what you need to have.
Good too.
And are you gonna spend a lot of time on it and
Yes.
expand it?
Yes.
Why are there lots of extensions written out here? for T?
Expand and
For answers.
Yes, because I don't want you to get up and say, well, they said this, so we're saying this, now let me move on.
blah, blah, blah,
What do we
blah.
say? When they make an argument, how many responses do we give?
3.
3 would be my preferred, at least 2. Even if they're analyticals, but you have to understand the concepts, and you also have to be very aware of what language you're using for which kind of judge. Because if we use the language for the fast judge, which is what most high school debaters do, for a judge who is not wild about hearing this and doesn't understand why you're running it, they're gonna be happy to vote for you? No. If you do it correctly, will they be okay? Yep. Okay. Questions about T?
What does it mean by reverse voting issue?
Some teams will get up and run that you should be punished for running topicality because it's gonna be a time suck.
And it's going
Like
to
time
be
skew?
education.
And then you have
I've
no
heard that.
risk. That you
It's
can
really
drop
fun.
it at any time, but because you claim it's a priori, it's a big deal. So that's why there's answers in there to it. And
Okay.
sometimes it's called an RVI. They
Yeah.
don't even explain what the RVI is.
They just use that jargon and expect everyone to be like, yeah, RBI.
Yeah, so they're cool. They're cool kids.
Look at me.
Look at me.
Think of this.
Okay.
So there's answers on why that would be. Plus, the real answer is, this isn't a time suck, we are going for this, because you would only run it
It's true.
when it's true. And if you're gonna spend the time on it, you're gonna carry it all the way through, which means you need to understand it well enough. Now, let me suggest with our new affirmatives, whether it's agriculture or IPR, we have a NAIC file. Could we be using this to practice running T
Yeah.
against our cases and work on answers to?
Yeah.
So that we're really thinking through, oh, and then they'd say this, and then we'd say this, and we could really get us readier to run it rather than waiting until we hit it at a tournament and go, now we don't know what to do?
Yeah.
So we're really trying to integrate this, so it's kind of taking you where you need to be. It's a powerful tool, but please get rid of all the T that you have.
Okay.
I only
I'll
want
do that.
the one definition, that we have a clear idea of what the violation is. We're gonna use the laundry list, because I think it's very clear, and I think it's within our skill set to explain. And then practice this. You need to be through this file. You need to think of what are some of the cases out there. And this is posted on the wiki,
Yes.
although I'm probably going to fix the one
No.
page, and you could always pull that up and print off a new page for